While it is true that on this channel I am more of a storyteller of historical events and topics within the world of college football, my tagline does read, College Football Stories, Lists, and Content from the Past, Present, and Future. So, let's throw out a little love to the present and future with this one. For this video, I wanted to go through the Power 4 conferences and pick one team from each that is my dark horse to make the college football playoffs in 2025. It should go without saying, but to be clear, I will not include a team that is expected to or has realistic preseason expectations that make them a contender as we sit now just before the start of the 2025 season. That's what dark horse means on the off chance you've never heard the term. When the season is over, and we can review this video with hard results, I actually don't expect to have predicted a Cinderella team necessarily. Be cool if I did, and I'll gloat about that if it does happen. But at the least, I hope to have correctly guessed a team that overachieved and was maybe one score away in a few games from having had a shot at the playoffs. We're playing with horseshoes and hand grenades here. Let's start with the ACC. Clemson is ranked 4th, Miami 10th, and SMU 16th. While you could call SMU a dark horse here, ranked sub-15th, it would also be a little boring to just pick a team that made it last year. Also, a fun couple of teams you could say would be Florida State rising back to relevancy or North Carolina under Bill Belichick making a splash, but I just don't personally believe that's going to happen so soon. My pick for the ACC is going to be Louisville. While the 2024 team went 9-4 and finished 6th in the conference, they were mostly all respectable, close losses. A one-score loss to national title game participant Notre Dame, a one-score loss to playoff participant SMU, a one-score loss to number 6 at the time Miami, and a 3-point loss to Stanford were the only blemishes for the Cardinals in 2024. They also beat conference champion and playoff participant Clemson. While the team did lose key talents such as Tyler Shupp, Ashton Gillette, and Quincy Riley to the NFL draft, they return a lot of defensive power to the 2025 squad. Perhaps the biggest noteworthy thing to keep an eye on is the addition of quarterback Miller Moss through the transfer portal. Moss had spent his entire career at USC, where he started 9 games in 2024, throwing for 2,555 yards and 18 touchdowns. Not exactly Caleb Williams numbers, but it will provide Louisville with an experienced signal caller and an above-average team to step into. I think the biggest hurdles will be sorting out team chemistry with transfer players and facing Pitt, Miami, and SMU on the road. But maybe, if they can click with their scheme and steal a couple of those tough road games, maybe even upset Clemson again in Louisville this time, they could sneak into the playoffs. The Big Ten. So just like before, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, or Michigan can't be considered a dark horse due to their high preseason rankings and their recent successes. Despite Illinois being ranked 12th in the preseason, I would still consider them a dark horse to make the playoffs and my pick for the Big Ten. Even though they went 10-3 in 2024, that was the first time they reached 10 wins since 2001, and only the third time since 1989. While they do have a few claims to national titles around literally 100 years ago, the Illini were last in serious national title contention in 1963 when they finished the season ranked number 3. For these reasons, I feel comfortable calling a top 12 team a dark horse due to them just not being a usual suspect. Illinois is returning 16 starters from last season, which is the second most among Power 4 teams. The quarterback, Luke Altmaier, will be a third-year starter, and they've added West Virginia transfer Hudson Clement, who will lead them with 1,221 yards and 9 touchdowns across 2 seasons with the Mountaineers. The schedule is also not as brutal as it could be. Illinois draws a favorable schedule with home games against Ohio State and USC. If the Illini can beat Duke and Indiana on the road earlier in the season and somehow find a way to beat either the Trojans or Buckeyes, or maybe even both, it's not impossible to see them ending up in the conversation when it comes to the playoff selection time. Hell, if Indiana of all schools can do it in 2024, well, I think you get my point. I'll admit that while I'm making them my pick, they could just as easily drop all 4 of those games I previously mentioned, and even drop another to Washington or Wisconsin on the road. Illinois, while put in a good preseason spot, could just as easily end up 6-6, too, which furthers my argument as them being a dark horse. The Big 12. The highest preseason ranked team for the Big 12 is defending champion and playoff 2024 participant Arizona State, a Sun Devils team without Cam Skattebo, and while still talented, I don't believe in them as much, and neither do the polls. Which kind of would make them a dark horse, but that feels like a cheap pick for the purpose of this video. I'm trying to stir the pot, not take the easiest answer. I feel there isn't a wrong answer here, as the preseason projections have the conference title odds between the top 8 teams at a very small margin. I wanted to take BYU here, as they are always in the 10-11 win mark and had a chance to be in that range again, but their starting quarterback is now gone. And we won't go into that since the whole situation involved a criminal charge that has since been dropped, but still. With BYU taking that blow, I'll go with Texas Tech, who is preseason ranked 23rd. In 2024, the Red Raiders went 8-5 and finished 7th in the final conference standings, but hear me out. There's a few teams that beat them out in the standings last year that I would drop significantly. Colorado will not be what they were after losing Sanders and Hunter. BYU, as I mentioned, has taken a huge hit, and I'd put them on an even playing field with TCU and Baylor. Texas Tech has opened up the bank with NIL lately, like a lot of Texas teams, and have brought in some good talent to an average team. The Red Raiders added 17 players through the transfer portal, and 7 of them were ranked in the top 75 transfer players, which gave them the number 2 class in the nation when it comes to transfer players, or number 1 depending on which outlet you look at. This also cost them around $10 million. The offensive side looks promising with key additions such as Quentin Joyner at running back from USC, with a slew of wide receivers, tight ends, and linemen who should pair nicely with the team's returning core of playmakers. New defensive coordinator Sheil Wood is also coming to town after greatly improving Houston's defense by nearly 50 spots in the national rankings. And I won't go on a name-dropping spree, but a lot of that transfer money went to this side of the ball, and there's real reason to be excited at Tech's defensive potential. As far as the schedule goes for 2025, it's not a killer, but it's also not fair to say they'll blow through it. A road game at Utah is never easy, nor is Arizona State or Kansas State, obviously. This one is probably my biggest long shot take, as they'll realistically fight their way to 9-3 at best. But if all these $10 million transfers somehow click immediately with the new coordinators, they could run the tables. This might be one of the more interesting teams in the nation to follow for the next few seasons, as they've already added 5-star players in the high school recruiting cycle as well. Perhaps in another video, I'll highlight why they might be an emerging future powerhouse more so than a 2025 playoff team, but we will see how hot things can start now, and I stand by my pick for now. The SEC. To find a dark horse here, we're going to have to throw out obvious contenders like Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. As a fan of an SEC team, I naturally hate plenty of teams in this conference, but I'll try to keep my bias out of this. But I won't try that hard. So while a lot of the media sees Florida as the dark horse here, I'm going to go another direction with South Carolina. I simply cannot praise the Gators for the next few minutes, even if there's a lot of credibility to some of those claims. While South Carolina is ranked 13th in the preseason, their baseline for historical success is rather low. They've won a single conference championship in 1969 with a 7-4 record. But this isn't a prediction on how South Carolina can win the SEC, but more on how they can find the playoffs without having to worry about the conference title game at all. Obviously, we should start by just saying LaNorris Sellers. The dude is a preseason Heisman contender, but the real concern is losing a lot of defense that finished 4th in the conference a season ago. Despite that, there's still a lot of talent, though some of it will be unknown to start with. They did well in recruiting with a class inside the top 20 depending on which source you follow. They begin 2025 with a neutral site matchup with Virginia Tech and Atlanta. I can see them winning that one. South Carolina State, Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Kentucky to enter an October 11th road game with LSU at 5-0. How that one goes is anyone's guess. But let's pretend they do enter that game 5-0 for a second. What must they do from that point on? Well, they'll have great opportunities to either climb the ranks or at worst avenge a loss with a quality win. Even if they drop that LSU game on the road, or maybe even Ole Miss later on, they'll have a chance to bounce back with a huge home game against Alabama and what should be a highly ranked Clemson team to end the season. I think what they should be hoping for, assuming perfection isn't realistic, is maybe a loss at LSU, a win over Alabama, another loss to Ole Miss, and a huge upset over Clemson. This would leave them at 10-2 and likely out of the conference title game, but lurking around the number 10 team in the nation and an at-large sneak-in. With so many questions surrounding Sellers, though, this team could also stumble against a Missouri, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, or Texas A&M. And even with a Clemson, Ole Miss, or Alabama upset, it would stall them into mediocrity for the season as a whole. But there it is, my dark horse picks for the Power 4 conferences to make the playoffs. Please don't take these picks too seriously if and when I am ultimately way off. But I am a college football content channel, and it only makes sense to throw out some wild guesses and to see how smart or stupid I look come December. And it was also fun to brush up on some season previews for teams I might have otherwise ignored at this time of year, and I hope it got you a little more excited too. Thanks for watching College Football Chronicles. I will see you next time.